Hi guys, today is the 31st of December 2020. It's 10 minutes past 3 in the afternoon over here in the UK. I just want to get straight into it. We know that one of the events we're looking out for from the iPad Go 2 video is war taking place with Iran or in the Middle East involving several countries like Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, so on and so forth. Um, at the moment, the interpretations that I've got for this war with Iran has to take place during Donald Trump's presidency. Now, obviously, as I said before, if he doesn't leave on January 20th, then there's more days that you can look at that for potentially happening. But if he is leaving on January 20th, then there's only really 21 more days, including today, where that could potentially happen. And over the last couple of days, we've seen a lot of escalations with Iran. For example, this report here, the US carrier, this is the USS Nimitz, transits the Strait of Hormuz amid tensions with Iran. So it says here, the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier safely transited on Friday through the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important choke point for oil shipments, the US Navy said, as tensions with Iran continue to simmer. But the US has also been flying B-52 Stratofortress bombers close to Iran's territory, and Iran is warning the United States. It says here, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif accused the United States on Thursday of trying to fabricate a pretext for attacking Iran. That's basically a false flag, which is something we've also looked at in order to get things started. And obviously, it says here that Iran has vowed it will defend itself from any sort of direct attack on its people or its interests. So we've got the potential for an event taking place that can be blamed on Iran, and then obviously things can move on from there. It says here intelligence from Iraq indicates a plot to fabricate a pretext for war. And obviously, we know that Donald Trump left the JCPOA, which is the Iran nuclear deal, and he's had a lot of confrontations with Iran over the last 4 years. But now he's leaving office, and it appears that things are escalating much more quickly. Obviously, there was the assassination of Qasem Soleimani and the assassination of a top nuclear scientist in Iran, as well as what appears to be a cyber attack on one of its nuclear facilities, setting a fire there. They blamed Israel for that. But as I said, there's a lot of things going on with Iran. So one of the things I've been looking out for involving Iran is an attack on a USS aircraft carrier. Now, that may be carried out by Iran, or it could be a false flag in order to start that pretext for war with Iran, or to give them a pretext for war with Iran. Now, one of the aircraft carriers that I'm most interested in, and you guys who followed my videos will be aware that I am looking at the USS Lincoln. And the reason I'm looking at the USS Lincoln is because in the iPad Go 2 video, we are shown Osama bin Laden on this iceberg-like structure, which to me, metaphorically, resembles an aircraft carrier. When Osama bin Laden was captured and killed, his body was thrown into the sea or into the ocean from the USS Lincoln. So I feel like them giving us an Osama bin Laden reference on an iceberg which could resemble an aircraft carrier is referring us to that particular aircraft carrier. When I was doing a bit of research here, I was trying to find out where the USS Lincoln is at the moment, and unfortunately, I can't find out. The latest report I can find is from May 2020, which says that the USS Lincoln is conducting operations in the US Third Fleet area of operations, which is basically the Pacific Ocean extending into the Indian Ocean. So I had a look because I didn't know what the USS Third or the US Third Fleet was, and I've come onto the Wikipedia page and I've seen this logo where the trident also represents the number 3 just here. And I was reading through the page and I was doing, trying to pick out anything that might connect me to the iPad Go 2 video, and I didn't really find anything. However, when I went back to the iPad Go-To video and I was letting it play and looking through it, I got to this point in the video here. Now what you'll notice, as we've all noticed before, is that in the window just here, there is the image of what appears to be a trident. Now in past videos, I've connected that with Poseidon, the Greek god of the ocean, and right next to it there's the lightning bolt in the shape of a Z, which could refer you to the Greek god Zeus, the god of lightning. But I'm looking at it slightly differently now because of this USS Third Fleet, or the US Third Fleet reference that I'm now getting. When I got to the bottom of the page and I saw the component units that made up the Third Fleet, one of the things that stood out to me was Carrier Strike Group 3. Now, combining the image from the logo of the trident of the Third Fleet and the fact that the fleet is made up of several different strike groups, I went back to the video and I thought perhaps this trident here is a reference to the trident here. Of course, there's other fleets that have tridents, but bear with me, I'm getting there. So trident, and then the lightning strike referred me to one of these strike groups. But then I thought, is the strike which extends to the third window pane giving us a reference to the Carrier Strike Group 3? Even if you don't believe that that could be a reference to Strike Group 3, as the video plays, and you come out of the scene a little bit, the first number that appears is the number 3. So what I'm looking at here is a potential attack or something involving the US Third Fleet's Carrier Strike Group 3. And part of that strike group is the USS Abraham Lincoln. And again, I bring you back to this point in the video here, where we have Osama bin Laden on an iceberg-like aircraft carrier, giving us that reference to the USS Abraham Lincoln. A second and unlikely thought came to my mind is, what if somehow Iran is able to take over that aircraft carrier? It's very unlikely because obviously it's surrounded by other components of the strike group, and there's thousands of soldiers on board. So that scenario is unlikely. But the fact that they're bringing in this USS Lincoln reference with Osama bin Laden on it, and what appears to be ISIS soldiers or Al Qaeda or any one of the any one of the potential terrorist groups that are associated with the Middle East, it could be, and it's just a possible theory, that something like that happens. As I said, it's unlikely because of the security surrounding such an aircraft carrier, but I'm putting it out there. Aside from that, there is also the possibility that we see the aircraft carrier attacked. Now, I can't remember the subscriber that pointed it out, but the house on the side here with the flames burning, if you was looking at it from bird's eye view, you could kind of turn it into an aircraft carrier. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So we was talking about the house over here, and from bird's eye view, it could potentially resemble what would be an aircraft carrier. So we're looking out for that scenario, particularly with the USS Abraham Lincoln, but also keeping an eye on the Nimitz, the McCain, and I've forgotten the last one. Yeah, I've forgotten. I'll put it in the comments if I remember. As you guys will notice, off to the side here, you've got the number 31, or what looks like the number 31. And then off to the other side, the flames on the side here appear to give a reference to the letter N. There's a very small gap in there, which you may or may not be able to see. I'm going to try and get you a closer image. Bear with me. Okay, perfect. So it's a bit blurry, but you can see just there's a gap between this line and this line, so it doesn't make it a complete flame like this one here. You can see there's no gaps there, just a gap there. So if you followed that round and came back down, you'd have what potentially could be an N. And then just below that, in the middle of the flame, we've got the letter Y. So that obviously gives us a New York reference, NY. The scenario with New York, obviously, it's a big place for New Year celebrations, not so much this year, but normally it is. And obviously, New Year is at the end of the 31st, moving on to the 1st of January. So we're keeping an eye out for these things around this time. Could be a burning house, could be like a church on fire, any other buildings, significant building on fire, a USS aircraft carrier. But there's also the fact that the shape of it and the flames coming off of it gives you reference to a missile, particularly like a nuclear missile. So we have to keep an eye out for any nuclear missile launches or tests that may take place. In terms of tests, that could come from America, China, Russia, but more likely we'll be looking at somewhere like North Korea or Iran. So keep an eye out for those things. At the same time as the N and the Y, the other sections of this flame also make out the letter M. So if you put N, Y, and M together, you're kind of drawn to New York, Manhattan. And then I've also noticed that the shape of the flame that they've done here also resembles a lobster claw. So, and it's in red. And I've talked about the possibility of some sort of event taking place at a Red Lobster. Perhaps it's the Red Lobster that sets on fire, or perhaps there's something near or in or under or above the Red Lobster that could have an effect in the area. There are two Red Lobsters in Manhattan, one upper Manhattan, one in lower Manhattan. I'll focus more on the one in lower Manhattan because it's right next to Times Square, obviously with the New York reference going on at the same time. It kind of draws you to that location. Times Square is where things usually take place. Then in close proximity, you've got the Empire State Building, you've got the Rockefeller Center, and various other important monuments. Madame Tussauds, not really a monument, but again, another famous place. So if anything was to take place at a Red Lobster in Manhattan, I would expect it to be in the lower Manhattan area. Obviously, this is mid-Manhattan, but going into the lower Manhattan area, you'll notice I've drawn a kind of directions line from Red Lobster through to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The reason I have interest in the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York is because they're the office that are really going after Donald Trump. And I feel like any event that takes place in New York will have a benefit to Donald Trump in terms of these investigations that have been taking place. So if what we're looking at is, say, for example, a dirty bomb, which is an improvised nuclear device, usually has a smaller radius for its explosion, we could be seeing that reference just here with New York, Manhattan, Red Lobster in the shape of a nuclear missile, or giving us that nuclear reference. And that could easily take out a large circumference area of Manhattan. Not to mention, tunnels that could be taken out at the same time, like the Lincoln Tunnel. Again, we're just being drawn back to Lincoln, whether it's the USS Lincoln or the Lincoln Tunnel. There's a lot of references to Abraham Lincoln in this video, and it's one of the people I think this skeleton represents. And because the skeleton also has connections to Donald Trump, and the way that Lincoln died was by a shooting to the back of the head, I've had a lot of references to that particular event taking place with Donald Trump. Putting all the 31s aside, that same number can also be looked at as January the 3rd. So 1 and 3. That may follow in a sequence because the following or the previous day, on January the 2nd, I'll be looking out for that eruption tsunami scenario involving any number of the volcanoes I've mentioned over the last couple of years. Just gonna have to refresh this, I think. And as I've pointed out before, inside of the apple where the volcano sits, we have that reference to 01 January and then 2 on the other side. So either January 2nd or January the 11th. Keeping an eye out for those things. And at the end of the video, as kind of similar with the tsunami just there, we also have that same number reference where we have 01 and 2 or 01 11. Now I usually ignore this little point just here, but if I'm not going to ignore it and I'm going to include it in the digits, then you could be looking at 01 3 January the 3rd. You could be looking at 01 January 1 2, which would be January the 12th, or you could do it as 01 2 1, which would be January the 21st, and that's the last day it could really be. As I said, I'm looking at these things taking place within Donald Trump's presidency. So, with all of that said, you guys, I think I'll leave it there. Keep an eye out today, obviously, for any situations involving Iran, the Middle East, Israel, things going on there. We know that another reference to 31 or the numbers 1 and 3 is here with the 3 planes and the 1 missile it fires out. So if that was giving us a reference to 31, we then have the missiles that come out, and later on we see them as fireworks. It's so difficult to do this way. So yeah, those same 5 missiles that come out, I believe they appear here, and it could be saying 5 days after New Year's. So maybe something happens with Iran today. Maybe Donald Trump authorizes some sort of attack on some sort of facility or something like that. Maybe there's collateral damage, as we see here, as the boy rises up out of that same location where the missile hit. So we assume from that there's some sort of collateral damage, and perhaps that's what causes Iran to then come forward. So there's too many threads to try and tie together, especially if you're trying to do it with dates. It will be easy enough for me to just go through the video and say, yeah, looks like this event is planned, looks like that event is planned. But trying to pin down the event with the date has proven to be quite difficult. However, we did see Kilauea begin erupting again around the 21st of December, and that's one of the number combinations we find inside the apple, which has the volcano on it. For those who don't know, the volcano is just here, erupting, lava coming out, and it's on the apple, which is supposed to symbolize an island, which could be the big island in Hawaii, or it could be the island on which Mount Etna sits. I've looked at both. And then when this apple splits open, we assume that that's giving us a reference to the volcano's flanks collapsing. And if that was to happen and go into the ocean or the sea, we would have some form of tsunami generated. But in the middle of this apple, we see 1, 2, 2, 1. So if you're looking at that as December 21st, Kilauea did erupt then. It was the 19th in Hawaii, but 21st in the rest of the world when this volcano started erupting, and it still is erupting at the moment. So if the eruption was to escalate and increase in intensity and lead to a frank collapse of some kind, we could look out for that today, for example. If you want to look at the 12 reference, 1, 2, and then the 31 reference with 3 seeds in total and 1 empty space, you could have a December 31st look there. And obviously, again, the apple is a reference to New York and can symbolize the ball drop in association with New Year's. So today's a really big watch. But obviously, if the combination for the numbers 1 and 3 or 3 and 1 do not reference the 31st, then there's only a few more dates we can watch out for with that number combination within Donald Trump's presidency. And that would be January the 3rd and the 13th. No other translations for it, in my opinion. So keep an eye out, you guys. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.